the first time this football season, it's been too long, our good buddy Payton Sochier. Payton, are you in a different room now, or is this the same room?
This is the kids and grandparents are getting ready for Halloween upstairs, so I got bumped to the basement type of situation. So
okay.
And so I new room, but same feel.
Okay, good deal. I was worried that you know that you did. Are you dressing up for Halloween with the kids?
I'm not. I'm one of those adults that's going to leave it to the kids. The kids are doing a full Paw Patrol theme going on tonight, so we're very excited about that. It's going to be a little bit chilly here in Denver, so I will be wearing a jacket.
Yeah, well, good deal. Good luck. This is. I know it doesn't look like a costume, but it is. I am Dave Portnoy.
Okay.
So that's who I am. I had a costume. This is the first time I've dressed up in a very long time. But our producer Andrew asked me to do it, and I did have to rain in his parade on another thing yesterday. So I couldn't do it again. I had to do something.
I'm sure you really struggled to put on more Florida State gear. I'm sure.
Oh yeah, I mean it was tough. So Payton. RankingsRightNow.com to people who don't know, you have a fantastic website where you can go on, you can play with the rankings, you can put in different scenarios, different scores of games. You want to know how Texas and Vandy is going to affect the standings. You have an ever-evolving algorithm, which I'm sure has only gotten stronger since you have the actual data from last year on the 12-team playoff to put in and see how the committee could react. We're coming up on the first week. What are some kind of general things you've seen as you've played around with it these last couple of weeks as the teams that are playoff eligible are narrowing?
I think one of the big things that people have to consider is there's two different types of elements when it comes to this. One is a lot of people are always saying, well, what is the AP compared to the selection committee? And the answer is it's not that different, especially if you remember last year when they released the first round of the selection committee. This last year was the first year that we really dug into it, but they weren't that different. And it was this whole thing that everyone bashes the AP poll all year long is that these people don't know what they're talking about. It's all nonsense. And then the selection committee came out and said it was 15 of the top 16 were exactly the same. So that's one thing that I think a lot of people need to be focusing in a little bit more. If you're really interested in what the selection committee is doing, look at the AP poll because it's going to line up really, really well. The other thing is once we get to the later parts of the seasons, that's where the season can really fall apart for somebody. At the beginning of the year, you can see these big swings in terms of rankings and where your preseason ranking helps you out a lot. I mean, Texas has been all over the place and a lot of people have criticized them, but they're still in really good striking distance right now. They can make a couple of nice little bumps and get into that 12 to 15 range. Whereas you have, once again, someone like Vandy who, if you lose to Texas this week, it could really, really rock your season, and you might not have enough ground to make up over the next few weeks to get into that striking distance, and especially when you're taking into account conference championship games, which are just going to be boosters to your resume. Those are all things to really be considering right now. But right now, I'm just really focusing on the AP poll as kind of the guiding light to what the selection committee is thinking.
Payton, I think everybody is kind of the belief now that it's going to be tough sledding for the Big 12 to get more than one in. You got BYU and Tech playing each other here next week, so that's going to give somebody either their first or their second loss. But BYU right there at 8-0. I mean, how do you feel about just kind of where they are, just right there in the top 10 behind a bunch of one-loss teams? But granted, they've got some nice wins along the way. But what do you think about BYU and what would alarm you or maybe also give you some positivity potentially about the race down the stretch for the Big 12 in particular?
I think specifically when it comes to BYU, they're in a really tough position because of that 10 spot. They have so many teams that are ahead of them. And I'm just looking at it right now. We got Texas A&M, Alabama, Georgia, Ole Miss, and those are your 4 SEC schools, right? You have Ohio State, Indiana, Oregon, and I'm trying to remember who belongs to what conference, but those are your Big 10 schools. Those ones are going to lock the grid a lot, right? So in terms of comfort room, BYU is kind of sitting there really nice right now. And especially, when you're coming down to those final couple of weeks, I would assume that we would all agree that they're most likely going to be in that conference championship. And there's no one else really there. The situation that kind of came out last year with the Big 12 kind of makes people really nervous that all of these big teams are going to get all of those big slots. You have Notre Dame in there, you have Miami in there, you have all of these really, really big schools that the Big 12 really needs them to really come out on top and run it the rest of the way through. So I wouldn't even say from a like, hey, you need to make sure you win your conference championship. You have to win out at this point because you have to get over that hump that everyone has when it comes to, nervousness around the Big 12 on, can these guys compete with the Big 10, the ACC, the SEC, all of these schools that have done traditionally really well in the college football playoff and have dominated? Do people really get excited about that? Last year, you saw all these huge slugfests when it came to the Big 12. It was really exciting. It hasn't been as loud this year. It's still been a lot of fun, but not nearly to the point where you have, CU making noise or other teams that are really, really making big impacts, and you can't miss those games. As of right now, BYU is kind of in that position where they're going to have to run out and really solidify, or it's going to be one of those things where the do we only get one or two that are going to sneak in at the very, very end, which would be kind of upsetting to a lot of people.
Who, in your opinion, would it be? Cincinnati, in order, like Tech and Cincinnati, probably the most likely to sneak in as that second one, but the scenario would have to be pretty specific of BYU pretty much wins out but loses one and likely in the championship game, and then someone other than BYU wins the championship game like Tech or Cincinnati to get in?
Yeah, it would have to be Tech. I think Tech is by far the best resume after BYU. It's probably up there. Right now, according to rankings right now, the AP poll, based upon what we're seeing for the projected scores for this week, we're having BYU at 10 and Texas Tech moving up from 13 to 12. So I think they're going to be really competing for those final two spots. But like kind of what happened last year, there might only be one team that really slips in a hair at the very end. When it comes to Cincinnati right now is projected to drop out of the AP top 25 with a loss this weekend to Utah. So, and then if you kind of flip it and Utah loses to Cincinnati, Utah is kind of out. So I think that as long as Tech is staying ahead of schedule there, it's going to be really, really hard for someone like Cincinnati or Utah to really kind of sneak their way there at the very end.
Who is one of the more compelling stories to you, either because you believe they're a little bit over-amplified, or maybe they're a team that's just you feel like going to maybe make a lot of noise down the stretch?
I just think Georgia Tech is fun. Georgia Tech is solid. They're projected to stay at number 8 at rankingsrightnow.com right now. They have a lot of depth. It's very similar to Vandy, in my opinion, where they have a very strong, older quarterback that's leading the team. They seem to have all the pieces in. They have one or two exciting wins, so they've been able to sneak one out at the very end. They know what a close game feels like. I think when it comes down to a lot of these teams, right? Like Ohio State's played maybe one or two close games. Texas A&M's played one or two close games. Georgia Tech is battling every single week, but they come out strong and looking good. So you have Georgia Tech and Miami. That's going to be really, really interesting for that conference championship. And I doubt that one of them is going to get completely knocked out of the top 12, but I could be wrong, right? Once again, you're kind of in that same situation when you look at Georgia Tech and Miami and BYU and Texas Tech. Is there enough room for everyone to exist where you can get multiple big or Big 12 teams or multiple ACC teams? We're not dealing with the Clemson years anymore where they were a big powerhouse and that they were automatically going to get that spot. Who is the second team going to go to? Now we're looking at like Georgia Tech and Miami, but since they're flirting around in that 8 to 10 area, it's getting really, really interesting. So I would say Georgia Tech right now is kind of the team that I'm looking at as, can they really run this? And I think they could really do some damage in the playoff this year.
They have a favorable schedule, that's for sure. Yep. down the way, to where they're going to be favored in every game, but probably the last one against Georgia. So right. They could be going the ACC title game at 11-1 theoretically, or 12-0. And that 12.
I mean, I think if they're 12-0 at that point, I think they're top 5, right? Especially if you can beat Georgia. It's going to be a really hard case, even though their last couple of games are a little bit easier. If they can beat Georgia, I don't understand how they could not be a top 5 team and you have a Big 12 representation, a SEC representation, you're going to want a ACC representation in there as well. I know I can't remember too much. I haven't dug into it this year about where those slots go to. I don't know if they've made any changes here. I know that it was in discussions of like who gets that bye or whatnot.
It's just straight seeding now. So
the top 4 get it.
Yeah, the top 4 straight seeded to get the bye. So
thank God. Okay, great. So in that case, I think that they're even if they can win out, I think they're looking at a bye in the first round, which would be nuts if you were to say that Georgia Tech's going to be the team. Had a really fun year last year, but they're playing solid this year. I don't think that right now a lot of people have them on their mind, but if they can win that Georgia game, I don't see how they don't end up in the top 4.
This week, Oklahoma and Tennessee, that one's pretty mission critical to both of them, yes. Right? The loser's out completely. And the winner could, especially depending on what happens in front of them in the next couple of weeks, find themselves sitting now towards the bottom of the 12, but in a good spot if they can not lose again because they both already have 2 losses.
You're completely right. So as of right now, Tennessee is sitting at predicting to win the game and move up to only 1 spot to number 13. That's because pretty much the top 10 all are projected to win. All are projected to win favorably. There's no big shifts that are happening except for Vandy is projected to lose to Texas. So Vanderbilt's dropping down all the way to 17 projected. Texas moving up to number 14. That's a big jump for Texas. But Tennessee doesn't really have any other movement up in that case. Now, one of the things that I've noticed when looking at these rankings and anytime something looks comfortable, that's when we have madness of a weekend where you can't believe something just happened. So do I think Tennessee's only going to move up 1 if they win? No, I could see that being 2 or 3, given that there might be something else that's really happening. I mean, Ohio State, Penn State was supposed to be like the game like 4 weeks ago, and now it's just some meaningless game that no one's even thought of. Ohio State's projected to win by 18. Like, if something weird happens there, which I don't think it would, but you have Florida and Georgia, you have Ole Miss and South Carolina. These are big names that are playing each other right now. So even though you have something like Tennessee and OU, which is a great matchup, and Tennessee's only projected to move up so much, I still think that there's enough big action that's happening up top that people are getting comfortable and thinking that, as we all kind of naively assume, that, oh, that's just going to be a standard win. That might not be the case. So as of right now, you're completely correct. It's projecting that Oklahoma is going to drop down to number 25 with a loss, and Tennessee moves up 1 to 13. I can play with that score also if you'd like. And if I just flip it, so right now it's projecting Tennessee's going to win 29 to 26. If we just flip that score real quick and run that simulation, should have it here in a second. So now if we have that flip. Right now, what we're going to be really considering is, does Oklahoma get a little bit more of a bump? And the answer is no. Oklahoma would also move to 13. So I would say, as of right now, assuming that the top 10 kind of stays the same, they all do what they're expected to do, Oklahoma or Tennessee will be that 13 seed, and they're right on that edge, right where they probably want to be going into the final stretch of the year.
Okay, well, look, that's good news for Craig. He's a big OU fan, and the last few weeks have been, underwhelming, I would say, for them. So, Payton, who is the maybe lowest ranked team right now that you think has a reasonable spot to get in without like having to directly factor in the conference title game? And that might not be a fair question because that's at this point a factor. But who's
lowest ranked? My dad went to Michigan State. He'd hate this answer. Michigan, maybe.
Really? Okay.
Especially if Michigan can win. So let's say the game, right? If they're able to beat Ohio State at the end of the year, they're sitting right now projected to be number 19, going after this weekend. So that's striking range. You need 1 or 2 resume, and you need a little bit of momentum, right? A lot of these rankings, as we were able to watch last year, is a lot of momentum. If you can gain momentum at the end of the year at the right time, you can jump up really fast. But as the flip side, you can also get completely knocked out of the way, right? Do I think USC is also sitting there at like 23, 21 right now? I don't think that's enough room to make all the way in. You have teams like Virginia and Louisville, and to be fair to them, this is the kind of time of the year where we see those 15, 16 teams really just have like that one bad game and then they're never to be heard of again, right? Either that's the flipping point of their season, or there's just not enough time to make up and move up into those top tier rankings. So if you have a team like Michigan that's going to be playing top tier opponents, right? They have the opportunity to move up in those rankings more and more and more as the season goes on, where a lot of these teams that are sitting 15, 16, 17, 18, right? It's projected Vandy is going to be at 17. Maybe if after this weekend, if they were to lose to Texas, and they could still move their way up because they're still a really good SEC school. But Michigan is the one that I'm looking at that looks really interesting right now to me, because everyone else is kind of like already on the border. But if you want like a lower team that could make their way up, Michigan seems like they have one game on their schedule that could really make a difference if they're able to continue playing really well throughout the rest of the year.
Yeah, you know, I'm just looking at it right now. And the last thing before we let you go, in the SEC, there are a couple of potential elimination games, not necessarily Vanderbilt, but if Texas loses that game, that's kind of an elimination game to them unless all hell breaks loose. Correct. And they beat A&M at the end of the year. The loser of Tennessee and Oklahoma, they're done.
They're going to be at 24-25 or completely out.
Yeah. Yes. And USC plays Nebraska. I don't think Nebraska's getting there, but if USC does lose that game, then their outside chance of getting up into the playoffs is over as well.
Yes. So that's why that's the only big name school, right? Like, as much as people don't want to like it, you have to look at those really big names, because that's how those AP voters, that's how those playoff committee voters, they tend to look at, and they want that in there, right? I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but does it drive up ratings? Are they thinking about these types of things? What are they thinking of the best matchups? We've even heard it from the selection committee talk about, we're looking for the best teams, right? That doesn't mean they're looking at their resume. They don't care if you won your conference championship, especially if they're now going straight up 1 through 12. They're looking at, well, who is the best team right now? We saw it a couple years ago with Florida State, right? Their quarterback gets hurt. They get dropped out of the top 4, right? They're looking for, as of this moment, who is the best. Michigan has the luxury, if you want to call it that, of the very last game prior to championship Saturday being against the number 1 team in the country, assuming that they're continue to be the number 1 team. That is the resume booster and the momentum that they might need to convince someone, let's just give them the 12 and let them ride it out, and let's see what happens.
Payton Sochier, rankingsrightnow.com.